Hey there guys, welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host and friendly neighbourhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell. I hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. So, got a couple of things to go through today. I already recorded this episode once. It's Saturday, the 31st of May, at the time of recording this one. Apologies about that, ladies and gentlemen. Had to plug my laptop charger in. Realised it got started and I forgot to plug my laptop charger in. So, a couple of things to go through today. Main things being, we've got some chronicles of true gross conduct on the part of the British police. Won't believe the depths that they've allowed themselves to descend to, which we'll be going through today. It's going to take up the first part of today, going through a lot of instances involving the police. Then we're going to look at some things to do with the Welsh government, some very concerning things indeed. British officials face US travel ban over social media censorship, and the US are not playing around, especially with remarks that people like Mark Rowley made before with regards to imprisoning Americans for social media posts. We'll get into that a little bit later. And finally, to finish off, a couple of notes on foreign MPs, a commonality with people reacting to the recent very tragic incident that happened in Liverpool, and an interesting note on the 3 Rent Boy saga with Mr. Keir Starmer. Anyway, we're getting into all that as we go along today, ladies and gentlemen. So, without further ado, I want to go over this one first. This clip came out 2 days ago. And it just goes to show, all of this that comes out just goes to show how little you can trust the police nowadays. So, Hertfordshire Constabulary. This is from a female police officer who was asked, there's a team of officers here, but it was a female police officer that said something in this incident that was truly reprehensible. This was a wellness check on a vulnerable teenage girl whose friend had called in to the police, do a wellness check because she was concerned for her friend's safety. Mainly, we're talking here, ladies and gentlemen, concerns of suicide. This is what we're talking about here. This is the level of concern that the friend had for their friend. And obviously, teenage girls go through a lot of negative emotion. These things are sadly seem to be getting a lot more and more common. The people, young people especially in today, where the climate, no pun intended, is designed to make them scared of every little thing, including their own shadow. But what the police officer's response in this situation is truly indicative of everything wrong with the police nowadays. How much they've been turned against their own people, how they, in many instances, outright hate their own people and will police them differently to the invading foreigners that come across the fucking channel every day. And they actually left in the end without doing the check. Now, the teenage girl, the video will explain, the teenage girl was found the next day unconscious by her social worker. Okay, so again, didn't do the check. And the thing that really got people up in arms about this, myself included, is the female officer was caught on camera saying, "Let her rot." We're talking about a vulnerable teenage girl with suicidal ideation, and the police who were charged with doing the wellness check on these young girls, or on anybody that's feeling suicidal or going through potentially a manic break or anything like that, right? Saying, "Let her rot," and then leaving without doing the check. If you think I'm joking, ladies and gentlemen, I am not. Allow me to take you now for the Daily Mail to explain.
This is the shocking moment a grinning police officer is caught on camera saying, "Let her rot," about a vulnerable teenager, then leaving without checking on her. A friend of the team told Mail Online the officers had called round after she had dialed 999, fearing her friend was having a breakdown and was about to take her life. She further claims that after the offensive remark that officers then left without making the proper checks. The teenager was rushed to hospital the following day after being found unconscious in her flat by her social worker. The female officer has now been removed from frontline duties, while Hertfordshire police look into her use of language, which they have described as not representative of the constabulary's ethos.
It's not just that. If there's anything less than this person being completely removed from the force, I don't think people should be satisfied with that at this point. With the amount that we've seen, with the amount of not only negligence and outright incompetence that we've seen, but the police outright turning evil in many instances, drunk on power, drunk on the dominion that they have been charged with. That they don't protect and serve the people no more. They protect and serve government interests. The government, government enforcement agents, all of them. I know that's basically in their name, but acting willingly and gleefully on behalf of the tyrannical regime, where they'll say, let her rot, about a vulnerable teenage girl that later on, next day, was found unconscious by her social worker. With the incompetence that we're seeing, and with how many evil things the police have been exposed to have done, from turning blind eyes to grooming gang victims, to many instances working in cahoots with the predators themselves, to engaging in heinous crimes themselves, to displaying this attitude at seemingly every single venture that they end up getting called to. This cannot be allowed. This cannot be allowed. These people need to be removed. If you ask me, again, controversial opinion, women shouldn't be police officers, end of. If you ask me. For reasons we'll get onto in a moment as well, for reasons will be illustrated to you. But attitudes like this is a big indictment and a big indicator as to why people don't trust the police in today's society. Why instead of seeing the police as some people whom have been charged with a very high degree of responsibility to uphold the rights and freedoms of society, now deliberately encroaching on those rights and freedoms, and doing so gleefully, where again, they'll say about a vulnerable, suicidal teenage girl, let her rot. People need to be fired over this. People need to be fired over this. Not just, lessons learned and all stuff like that. No, at the end of the day, people need to be fired over this. The badge needs to be brought back so that it means something. Currently, it means nothing. A lot of these people are just low-rent thugs. Because, you got to have diversity and equity and inclusion and all that stuff, right? That's what we've got to have. The most important thing that you could ever have is not competence, is not people with the right mindset, the right frame of mind, and the right aptitude and competence to deal with these situations. No, it is diversity and equity and inclusion, of course. And then you end up with police officers like this. Questionably, did they get there on their own merits? Or questions to be asked, did they get there on their own merits? Or were they pushed for the sake of diversity? If you think I'm joking when I say the police are behaving in outright evil ways, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just limited to women, by the way. This is not just limited to women. Really, I think women shouldn't be police officers for different reasons, other than this, emotional aspect. But we have the example that came out of Sussex a little while ago. So I want to preface this by saying now, these officers that you're about to see, this heinous clip, which I believe we've covered before, were found not guilty recently in the courts in Sussex for, I'm going to get the charge a bit quick because I can't remember what the full charge was. I believe it was intent to cause actual bodily harm or something like that. Give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. So, the officers you're about to see, ladies and gentlemen, this is a man by the name of Donald, I've forgotten his surname. Where is it? I've forgotten his surname. Donald Burgess. He's 92. I say was 92 because very, very sadly, he's no longer with us. He is a 92-year-old man, I believe, with several respiratory conditions like COPD, emphysema, and also with dementia. And apparently, according to some people, he's also an amputee, but the video doesn't make it clear. These officers that you're about to see were found not guilty at Southwark Crown Court of assault occasioning actual bodily harm. Now, why were they in court, you might ask? Well, this video will explain to you in a moment. Viewer discretion is advised, ladies and gentlemen. Because Donald Burgess, despite being a 92-year-old frail elderly man with dementia and several respiratory conditions, as far as I'm aware, was pepper sprayed, assaulted with a baton, in legal terms, you know, because anything can be classed as assault nowadays, right? And then tasered. Tasered in this situation because he is seated in what appears to be the layout of a room that would be in an elderly residence home. And he's holding a knife. So he's holding a knife. This is a 92-year-old gentleman who's clearly not in a very welcoming and positive state of mind that the police are in here. They're being very loud, very belligerent. As I said, they pepper spray him. I believe nowadays they don't use actual pepper spray. They use some kind of synthetic stuff. Either way, it does the same thing. It's meant to do the same thing, right? It's meant to incapacitate. They also then try to knock the knife out of his hand with the baton. And then the female officer decides to pull the trigger on the taser. And I want you just to watch and listen for the sounds that come out of this man, ladies and gentlemen. If it doesn't make your stomach turn and your blood run cold, that the police could treat a 92-year-old dementia patient in what appears to be an elderly residence home in this way. It could be your father, it could be your grandfather in this way, that they could deprave themselves so much to treat this elderly man this way, after he's very likely broken his back for this country in his youth and in his younger years. This should make your blood run cold and your stomach turn, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you pay attention.
Put it down. Donald, put it down.
Seriously?
Last chance.
Can you just hold that door? I can't get a good one.
Donald, put it down. Put it down now. Come on.
Last chance.
So for those of you listening, not watching, this is the moment where they spray him. He's reeling in the chair.
Put it on the floor.
Do it now. Drop the knife.
Donald, drop the knife.
Would you?
Donald.
Put it down. Put it down.
Taser,
There you go.
taser.
Now, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Burgess is no longer with us. Donald Burgess is no longer with us because in the 3 weeks after this incident, I believe, as far as I'm aware, he suffered several more health complications and died as a result of this. Or at least, if not as a direct result of this, this was heavily implied to have been one of the factors that led then to his death 3 weeks later. These are the people charged with protect and serve. Protect and serve what? I want you to think, ladies and gentlemen. So it wasn't protect and serve anybody in this instance. They did something knowingly that directly led to this man's death. Needlessly, in my opinion. Ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, it's a 92-year-old man. Let me see if the camera... This is who we're talking about here. This is Donald Burgess here. Do ask yourself, if you're a man of this officer's stature, there's the male officer. Do you really And again, not to armchair general or anything like that, but do you really have reason to fear for your safety here of a 92-year-old man with dementia, respiratory conditions, who is also, if reports are correct, an amputee? You're not dealing with a young 20-year-old male with a knife, fully able, moving fast in an open environment, you know, where he could seriously cause you threat to your life. Okay? You're not dealing with anything close to that. You're not dealing with anything close to some of the things we're going to see in the next clip, where a police officer very embarrassingly had to scream and plead for members of the public to help him because he could not handle a single assailant. That clip is coming up in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. But no, something in these warped, disgusting individuals' minds led them to the conclusion that the best course of action, the most appropriate course of action for the people that are charged with protect and serve, in this instance, is to spray him in the face with mace, which was the first thing you do when something like that happens. If you have something really, you know, thing go in your eyes, you have something, you know, I'm trying to think of a good comparison, like something really sour, okay? You tense up. You tense up. If something was a stimulus that you weren't expecting, your natural response is to tense up. They're screaming at him, drop the knife, and then they put him in this situation where already his mental faculties are compromised. Already his mental faculties are compromised. And then they're putting him in a situation where you're inflicting this stimulus on him where there's no chance of any rational thought coming back. Why would he drop the knife? He probably thinks that these people are going to kill him. Oh, wait, they did. Oh, wait, he ended up dying 3 weeks later. Maybe Donald was right. I ask you again, if you were in Donald's shoes, try and imagine it. Would you got to try and imagine, obviously, not having as much rational thought as you may otherwise have. But would you? Would you? This is the state of policing nowadays, ladies and gentlemen. And it shows you where the courts lie. That they'll lock people up like Lucy Connolly for social media posts, who's still serving in prison. Her appeal was very sadly recently rejected. Regardless of what you think of him, they'll lock people like Tommy Robinson up for releasing a documentary for detailing corruption with regards to the incident with the Syrian refugee. Right? And then the courts, they go to court and then they're found not guilty. So they're probably not going to get any punishment whatsoever. The court of public opinion will indict them. The court of public opinion will indict them. But what's that really, at the moment at least, what's that really worth? You know? Obviously these officers will never live this down. It's incumbent on all of us to make sure that justice is done for Donald and his family, and that anybody else who has come into the path of these officers will come into the path of them in the future. So anyway, I mentioned now, a lot of these instances can be downright evil. A lot of them are just downright embarrassing. And this is an example of where half the time, not even the men that are police officers should be wearing the badge a lot of the time. If they shouldn't, women definitely shouldn't be. So this is a video now I mentioned to you, ladies and gentlemen, of the police officer that very embarrassingly had to scream in terror for help from members of the public, which then had to put themselves in danger. So police, in theory, are the people that should be putting themselves in danger to protect you, the private citizen, or the global citizen, as some may say. You're now having to put yourself in danger to protect the police. And this is DEI in action right here. This happens to be a white male. This happens to be a white male police officer. So again, why on earth do we put in already... And we have police that are already so bad, why are we trying to make it even worse? Even worse. But then you realize everything's by design, right? You realize everything's by design. If you go and listen to my recent sit down with Victoria Rickson, you know that everything that's going on is by design. But here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This, again, perfectly encapsulates in the next clip we're going to go over to really hammer the point home that I'm trying to make here, that you guys should be up in arms about this, and you guys should be ready in many instances, not making any judgments as to what you should be doing in any instance, but you got to be ready to be able to handle some things yourself, because you can't trust police. You can't trust police because of their ideological indoctrination, and you can't trust police because of their outright incompetence. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. So here you go. So I'm going to play it on mute now. Aside from one part. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. Help me, help me. And that is not just like, oh, lads, give me a hand. Come on. You know, could do with extra men here. I'm in a fight. You know, could do with extra men. This man is terrified for his life. This man is terrified for his life. And rightfully so. He's dealing with, for those of you who are watching, not listening, he's dealing with a single assailant who, at least as far as I know, seems to be at least somewhat physically very similar to himself, maybe slightly bigger. You got to take into account with the vests and the uniform and stuff like that, often it can make them look a little bit bigger than they actually are. But it's a gentleman and the assailant is in a grey hoodie and what appears to be grey joggers or grey sweatpants. And yeah, you can, if I freeze frame it here, so here you go, ladies and gentlemen. So as you can see, not a massive difference in body size. They're pretty much exactly the same. If anything, the assailant may be slightly lighter. Again, hard to judge from here. But now, due to this officer's, you know, not only being taken by surprise, but not knowing how to handle this situation, either not having the right training or just going into a panic, not having the right mental capacity to deal with this situation that transfers to his physical capacity to deal with it, he's then having to scream in terror for bystanders who end up coming over. And you never know nowadays. Oftentimes, a lot of these people will join in on the side of the assailant. And that's actually what the first person appears to do. The first person in this instance appears to come in and attack the police. Oh, no, I think he's trying to kick the guy past the police officer. If you have a look, ladies and gentlemen, the guy that comes in the red shirt, he grabs the officer, right? So if you're looking at this on screen, you'll be able to see it. Guy comes in, grabs the officer, and it looks like... So the officer's trapped with his what appears to be his arm behind his back, right? So this is a really, really bad position to be in. But the guy with the red shirt comes in, grabs him, and it looks here, you have to be careful and look for his leg. It looks like he's about to throw a knee into the officer, but I believe he's actually trying to get past him because you can see his foot peek through the bottom there to try and get to the assailant to try and separate them. So obviously, the public, you wouldn't expect to know how to deal with this situation. And the gentleman here, obviously just grabbing the bear hug. If in doubt, just bear hug, you know, in a lot of instances. The public should not be expected really to know how to handle this situation. Certainly should not be expected to have to jump in and rescue police officers in a lot of instances. And granted, you could say the guy was taken by surprise, but at the end of the day, where's the training? Where's the training? And that really speaks to a lot of it, because a lot of these officers, they're going into these situations with the air of thinking they're invincible. They're going into these with the air of thinking they're invincible because they never suffer any legal consequences for their crimes. They're going in being told to do truly, truly disgusting things, you know, policing people for thought crimes, you know, arresting grandmothers for things that they say on social media. They're fully indoctrinated by the training that they receive, right? Where they turn them against their own people. They're now politicized enforcement arm against their own people. So that's what they've been turned into. A lot of them, they've swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. But when they get into these situations, it's the very same kind of people that they're policing for thought crimes and stuff like that, you know, locking their grandmothers up and stuff like that, that they expect to rescue them when they get into these scenarios. It's truly, truly disgusting. But where's the training? That's because I guarantee you this officer, maybe, unless he's very recently started, maybe this will be the catalyst that starts it. He's never set foot into like an MMA or jiu-jitsu gym. And I think it should be mandatory. I think it should be mandatory if you're going to be a police officer, that you should have some level of achievement with regards to some kind of martial art, you know, with grappling especially and stuff like that, because this is what it is. This is all grappling. Jocko Willink puts it really well. Jocko Willink, ex-Navy SEAL, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, runs a martial arts gym out in San Diego, California. And you might have, you know, read his books, for example, like Discipline Equals Freedom, Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy of Leadership, all stuff like that, right? So he's written many books, very accomplished individual. But he put up something really, really well, in my opinion, and really got me started in jiu-jitsu. Granted, I haven't trained for a long time now, and I'm thinking about going back as of recently. But he said, look, if somebody wants to fight you, the one thing you can always do, the one thing police officers can't do, unless it's a riot in Hare Hills and they'll just run for the hills anyway, you know, leave the place and the people to riot and potentially leave the citizens there that they're supposed to protect and serve to die. Okay, so we know that we have the infamous clip of them running away. But he made up a really good point. They're saying, like, if somebody wants to fight you, first thing you can do is always run away. Okay, and oftentimes that's better than anything, because you never know, people, you know, they could have weapons, you know, it only takes one friend to see it and jump in, or a crowd will jump in. Again, a lot of times we've seen it now where police have tried to make an arrest and almost like a tribalism has taken place, especially if it happens in certain communities, you know, allowed to talk about and stuff like that, where they will come out and they will protect their own, even if they are a heinous criminal, pedophile, grooming gang rapist, stuff like that, right? So you have that. But again, you can run away. If you're just a citizen, you can run away outside of extenuating circumstances where you might have your girlfriend or wife or your children, your mother, whatever it might be. But if somebody grabs you like this gentleman did, the minute this happens, so this is the point. So he's wailing on him. I'm just trying to find the point there where you can see that. So the first thing he did really bad was that he turned his back on the guy. He turned his back on his assailant. So obviously, that's just awful. But look at this, right? This is a travesty. This is a travesty. But the biggest thing is, he's grabbed him now. He can't run away anymore. If this is just you, for example, or God forbid, your girlfriend or your wife or something like that, or, you know, your son, your daughter, they can't run away anymore. Then you need to know how to handle yourself. And that's where, like, wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai especially, you know, striking from the clinch and stuff like that, really, really comes into its own. Not only that, not only is it good for keeping our officers safe, it's good for keeping their mentality in check as well. Because it stops them from being drunk on power. Because they'll go into the gym and they will just get destroyed by everyday people that they would have jurisdiction over in the external world, right? That they would have jurisdiction over, they would have dominion over, and they would have legal powers over, that they could feel as though they could boss about. But they come into the MMA gym and they get humbled. Let's say they get a little bit too overzealous in a choke and they end up going to sleep. A random person, it might be a random teenager that's been training for years, right? Puts them to sleep. Not on purpose, obviously. Imagine how humbling that experience is going to be. Knowing that you could go into a scenario and that if you're going to try and throw your big boy weight around because you have a badge and cuffs and spray and all of this, and you're going to try and bully citizens, that they could bully you right back. And it changes the mindset you go into it. You'll go into it a little bit more respectful. You won't say, let her rot, about a vulnerable teenager that's suicidal, you know? You won't taser a 92-year-old dementia patient, an amputee. You won't do those things because you know just how small you are. You know just how insignificant you are in that sense. And you know that there's so many people out there that you are in charge of policing, mind you, that you are in charge of protecting and serving, that could very easily have their way and do whatever they wanted with you, and you could do nothing about it. And that is a terrifying feeling. If you never had that feeling, ladies and gentlemen, where you've been like on your back, stuck on your back, you cannot move, and somebody is just doing whatever they want to you, it is a truly terrifying feeling. You feel like you're suffocating. If they're very good with top pressure and not letting you move and isolating your limbs and wedging you in place and systematically moving from one step to the next, to the next, to the next. It is terrifying. And a lot of these officers need that. Actually trained, one of my favorite training partners is a police officer. He's an amazing guy. And he'll speak time and time again about the value that the training has instilled in him, both physically for his own safety and his mentality. Should be a must. Should be a must, because weak men create hard times. Weak men create hard times. Speaking of weak men creating hard times and diversity and equity and inclusion ruining the country, is the final video the police we're going to be going on to today, and then we're going to be moving on to the rest of the show. So, this was an incident that occurred, I'm not sure where, ladies and gentlemen, but this is perfect encapsulation of the DEI policies in action. I'm just going to let the video play. It would be hilarious if it wasn't depressing.
Bit harder. Go on. Hit it.
Give up with it.
You call yourself police force? No force in you.
And
bit harder.
it's hard to defend them. It's hard to defend them. And again, they're not necessarily to, blame for it, the people in these positions, but this perfectly encapsulates it. This perfectly encapsulates, again, in my opinion, women shouldn't be police officers. Sorry, ladies, if that offends you. Don't care. But the fact of the matter is that you have here, looking over them, now feminists truly should be angry at this image. The strong, independent females not only failing to break down the door, but you have a man, you have a man overlooking and supervising, just with his hands on his hips, with what looks to be like, look at contempt on his face. Is this not degrading? Is this not degrading if you're like a self-touted feminist and stuff like that? Is this not degrading? I don't get it. But for a fact, as soon as this guy, if he ever was to say, go on, I'll do it. I'm a lot stronger. Let me do it. No, we're strong, independent women. You're sexist. You're this, you're that. Character assassinated. Lose your job. You disgusting sexist. We need more. This is systemic discrimination. We need more women, strong women in police force, and all of this stuff, right? Exactly that's where this is going to go. Exactly that's where this is going to go. What can this guy do? But the only thing is, problem is now, say this was a drug bust. Or say they've just chased somebody, they've seen somebody stab somebody. And now they're trying to chase and break down the door because they've just seen the guys running through the door and locked it. By the time they get in, guy's long gone. If they had any drugs, if this was a drug bust, drugs are flushed away. They're gone. Whatever it might have been. Weapons, long hidden, Or somebody's jumped them in a bag at the back and somebody's taken them somewhere else. They won't find anything. Everything that they were here to do will be gone by the time they get in, because they're still, guys, make no mistake, they're still there right now. This video came out a couple of days ago. This video came out 2 days ago. They're still there trying to break down that door right now. DEI working its magic, indeed. And again, the actual one that could do something to positively affect the situation has his hands tied, metaphorically, and in many instances, literally as well. But anyway, why is this so important, guys? Why is it so important? Because otherwise, people need to take matters into their own hands. So this was an incident that happened in Ireland. Ireland has one of the worst police forces I've ever seen in recent memory. I call them the Garda Gestapo for a reason. In Dublin, an African migrant attempts to break into an apartment, and this is because he followed a woman home. He followed a woman back to her apartment and then tried to get in. You can imagine what he was trying to do. The Irishman, i.e. her partner, whether it's her boyfriend or her husband, I have no idea, had to rush home from work, had to leave doing the positive labour which enables him to give back to society, but first and foremost take care of his family, has to leave that in order to deal with this problem that we've been importing en masse, and that if anybody's had any complaints about, we've been called racist, xenophobic, all of these different terms, different labels that now mean absolutely nothing. in order to protect this woman. Because you've got to take into account, you've got the police force that are actively on the side of these migrants, that are enforcing the plantations that are being built all over Ireland at the moment. Ireland is being colonised, let me tell you. And the Garda Gestapo are hand-fisting, iron fisting their way through and forcing the residents. We covered a little while ago where I believe it was a 15 or 16-year-old boy was attacked with pepper spray and beaten with batons by the Garda Gestapo for just having a peaceful protest with a bunch of others for objecting to unvetted military-age migrant males being dumped into their communities, which they should never, ever have to tolerate. And the person correctly says, we shouldn't have to live like this. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the gentleman here that followed this woman home. And just imagine, this could very easily be you. This could very easily be you. It could be your girlfriend, could be your mother, could be your sister, could be your daughter, could be whatever. Could be whoever. We shouldn't have to live like this.
Why did you try to break into my apartment? My girlfriend was down her own. Why are you trying to force yourself in?
No, I'm not forcing it. So, you see what's going on right now, yeah?
Good. You're going to be in a jail cell.
Not now.
Guy,
Disgusting.
He's a big boy. That was our brother. So now, like, why would I?
Truly, truly disgusting.
but you thought there was a girl there.
Would go? So
Doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out what
You
he
thought
wanted to
there was a
do.
fucking girl there.
I did not.
So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a screenshot, and it says here, this morning in Park West, a man was trying to break into apartments, got caught by one of the residents. Fair play to this man for holding him until the Garda arrived, in which case they probably escorted him into his apartment and let him do whatever he want with the woman. No, that's a uncorroborated statement, ladies and gentlemen. That's hyperbolic statement on my part. But again, not out of the realms of possibility whatsoever for the Garda in Ireland. No, so there is a clip actually of the Garda turning up, and it does appear that they're escorting him away. So I cut that clip off a little bit early. I didn't realise that there was a little bit extra after that. It does appear that they're actually escorting him away. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you're in serious danger. You're in serious danger from a lot of these people. So here's another one, for example. I believe this one is another case of something that happened in Ireland. And these people, they are open about how much they despise you, how much they despise your children, and the evil they want to do to you and your children. So we have this example, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if this person has been arrested since then. I've heard various things. It's all part of the open borders, globalist, Soros-backed agendas, right? With the UN replacement migration and all of this stuff. That's led to, as Renaud Camus would say, genocide by ethnic replacement, or genocide by replacement. Look at this scholar that we're bringing in from the third world, ladies and gentlemen. Just let him tell you. This is not even me telling you. This is not even your friendly neighborhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell, telling you now, right? This is this man telling you, in his own words, what his intentions are when he gets through Europe to Britain. I think he ended up in Ireland in the end.
Irish, I'm coming on top of you now. I'm gonna be slicing your baby's kids and you before everybody. Get ready, mother, cause you pissed me off too. Irish, I'm coming on top of you now.
So, he said, Irish, I'm coming on top of you now.
I'm gonna be slicing your baby's kids and you.
I'm gonna be slicing your baby's kids and you
Before everybody.
before everybody.
Get ready, mother.
Get ready, motherfuckers,
Irish,
because you
I'm
really
coming on
pissed
top
me
of you
off.
now.
The governments look at this guy, they look at this filth, and they see a future voter. They see a future voter. So that's why they hold the doors open and let these barbarians in through the gate en masse. I believe today there was over 1,000 that entered in Dover, if I'm not mistaken. There's over 1,000 entered. Since the start of 2025, we're not even halfway through the year yet, but we're coming up on the halfway point, literally right now, we've had over 10,000 small boats come across the channel. Now, if there's one person, let's just do a quick bit of napkin math. If there's one person on that boat, that's already 10,000 people that have no business coming here illegally and getting all the benefits, and in many instances coming from the same places as this guy with the same outlook, right? But we know that's not true. We know that would be, if that were true, Jesus Christ, we would be in a heavenly position compared to what we're actually dealing with. No, we know these boats have anywhere from, 30, say between 15 and 60 people, depending on the size of these boats. That's why illegal immigration numbers at the moment, illegal entry into this country at the moment through Dover, has numbered over 30,000. I wouldn't be surprised if very soon, just at the start, just over the turn of June as we're going into now, we very quickly see that number go over 40,000. We're not even halfway through the year yet. We are not even 1 year into Keir Starmer's term, and already things are unimaginably bad. Even people who knew what were coming, even people who could see exactly what was going on with the British political system, where the Conservatives and Labour, two sides of the same coin, with two cheeks of the same arse, you're voting for the same thing, either way. There's one redeeming factor in the Conservatives, which I see at the moment, and that's Robert Jenrick. That's the one redeeming factor that I see. But again, this is where they're bringing over. This is what the Welsh government want to bring in under nation of sanctuary, so that you can slice up your kids. And we saw in Southport that they fucking mean it. We saw in Southport that they mean it, ladies and gentlemen. Why are you not up in arms over this? And like I said, when you can't trust the police, you've got to be ready to police your own communities. You've got to be ready to keep your own family safe. If you aren't already training and stuff like that and getting ready for what's coming, then make sure you are. Make sure you are. Because let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, they make it obvious. Not only do they record themselves doing this, not only do they record themselves coming across on the boats, dropping their documentation in the channel, as to deliberately make it hard to identify them so that they'll be able to skirt around the protocols that we have. It makes it hard to do background checks, so we'll just give them the benefit of the doubt, chuck them up in a hotel, even if they're a disgusting third world ISIS-linked terrorist or something like that, right? In the aftermath of what happened in Liverpool, so Wales Online recently put out an article where they detailed the youngest victim injured in the Liverpool parade horror was revealed as a 9-year-old. A 9-year-old was the youngest victim injured. Now, at the time of this recording, the person who screen recorded this, which I'm going to share with you now, there was 165 reactions. The first most common reaction, as you would imagine, was the sad emoji, right? The sad react. That makes sense, right? A 9-year-old has potentially been critically injured in what was very likely a completely avoidable incident, whether it was an intentional one or whether it was a miscommunication that the driver didn't realize that the roads were closed and got stuck in the middle of the parade, and when he was being attacked, he panicked. And again, people have said different things about this stuff. People have been saying that the person they had in the dock, based on the sketches, doesn't match the photos that we saw. Nothing really to say on that point at the moment. It's very convenient, however, how when it's a white gentleman, how quickly that information can be released, including his name, his age, his ethnicity, probably where he's from, and that doesn't prejudice any trial. But when it's a disgusting Islamic Rwandan migrant terrorist with Al-Qaeda manuals, writes in and stabs up 3 girls at a Taylor Swift dance concert, we can't say anything about him, anything, name, age, ethnicity, where he hails from, religious ideology, nothing of that, because it might prejudice the trial. It's convenient how that works, isn't it? When one instance it can be released right away, no problems at all. And the other side, you got to be careful, it'll prejudice the trial. But check out some of the people, ladies and gentlemen, who are contributing to the second most common react to this incident. Remember, a 9-year-old is injured, which is the laugh react. Ask yourself, why are people laughing about this? So, for those of you who are listening, not watching this, you have 165 reacts at the time of this video being taken. 80 of them, so about half, were the sad react. You have 41, the second most common reaction, is the laugh reaction. Then you have, after that, you have the Keir reaction, which is at 23, and then you have like, and then you have anger. So 14 and 7 for like and anger, respectively. But when I put this video up on screen now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to have a look. If you notice a pattern in anything regarding the names and people with which you see that are laughing about a 9-year-old being injured in this atrocity in Liverpool. I'm just going to let the video play for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. And then if you're watching and not listening, if you're listening and not watching, sorry, bear with me and I'll read some of the names out. So this is what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. So, for example, we have one, at least as far as I can see, one British name, stereotypical British name, by the name, I'm going to name and shame, Daniel Jason Morris, who laughed at this incident. But who do we have, for example? We have Renang Kekisi, Ayan Islam, Zara Mohammed, Neil Rifat, MD Rayed, Basma El Sad said. We have Fotuccia Leone Caprice or Capricci. We have Varotra Mora Bay. Akun Santino. We have some others which I cannot pronounce whatsoever. Some of these names, ladies and gentlemen, are completely in a foreign language. So I would have no idea how to pronounce this name, for example. We have Gino or Ginot, Fabrice, Fabrice, no idea. So what do you notice, ladies and gentlemen? If I say Emmanuel Musonda, Mondialiste Lueboy, Sunil Katal, what do you notice? Oh yeah, you're not supposed to notice, but the vast majority of them are fucking foreigners. Very likely in this country. Very likely, going back to, oh, what was it that he said again? Oh yeah, I'm going to slash up your kids. I can't wait to slash up your kids and kill your kids and all this stuff. And then when something very serious does happen, when something very serious and sad does happen, they laugh about it. This is the kind of people that we've imported. These are the kind of people that we've imported. Large numbers of them. And they all need to go. They all need to go. Obviously, I don't know if every single one of them resides in this country, you know, but all of them need to go. It's as simple as that. If they do, all of them need to go. We need to stop being so fucking nice. This is our home at the end of the day. You don't allow people to come into your home and trash it. You know, if your friend's coming into your home and, you know, disrespecting your home and stuff like that, you don't stand for that. And just let them do whatever the fuck they want. Usually, however, when your friend comes into your home, they're naturally very respectful to your home, right? A home is a man's castle at the end of the day. You show respect whenever you go into somebody else's home. These people don't show respect when they come into ours. No, they see it as conquest. A lot of these people see it as conquest, and we need to start seeing it as such. We need to start seeing it as many people now calling it, many more and more people normalizing the term, not only the great replacement and ethnic replacement, but also that this is an invasion. This is not sympathetic migration for asylum seekers. No, this is an invasion. This is an invasion. An invasion that our government's taking joy in facilitating and gaslighting us about it. So, for example, Kent School Council. Kent School Council. This is the kind of stuff that they show as propaganda in order to promote the open borders agenda. I'll just let it play now, ladies and gentlemen.
Food was awful today, don't you think? Just hate it. Oh, look, my bus is over there. I've got to go. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you later.
You alright? Where are you going then?
First off, question why they're using young children in propaganda material like this.
Oi! Are you even listening?
Go away, you're so immature.
Are you going to tell me or not?
Come on, man, let's just go.
So the harassers of this young lady, if you're not watching but listening to this, ladies and gentlemen, are two young white boys. The focal point in question was the young girl that they are harassing, trying to paint the picture that it's, you know, young white boys that are the main harassers, and trying to discredit people that say no, there are links between things like religious ideology, ethnicity, and the treatment of young girls who have been, you know, raped and trafficked all up and down the country. If you remember, in the last episode, I covered several studies that concluded there was very, very strong links between race and ethnicity and religious background, and the on the part of the perpetrators, and the victims overwhelmingly being white young British girls. Go back and find out one of my other episodes to find that.
Boy, where you going? Oi, why don't you come over here?
Go away, just leave me alone.
Come on, I know you want a bit of this. Why didn't you come over here? Oi, I'm talking to you.
It's a complete inversion of reality.
You're right, girl. Give us a smile.
I just want to get home.
So here you go, and obviously you have now the hero of the story here. The hero of the
I
story
just want to get home.
of the white man that's harassing her obviously has to be a brown Muslim.
Sorry.
Very likely, anyway. And of course, the victim here.
I was only messing. I was just trying to impress my mates.
I'm just having a laugh.
75% of girls in the UK have experienced some form of public sexual harassment in their lifetime. Don't disrespect.
Yeah. I'll quickly find it for you now, ladies and gentlemen. Bear with me. So like I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you look on screen now, ethnic religious background of rape gang offenders by percentage. 82% Muslim in the Batty, Sinclair and Sutcliffe, what appears to be a study in the, however the hell you say this, Uli Potifla Analytics, however the fuck you say that, from 2020. That's this top green bar here. 96% Asian, 84% Asian, 75% Asian. Obviously, it's very disgusting to use this Asian euphemism, in my opinion, because it lumps in very unfairly. You know, these aren't, as I said, these aren't like Chinese or Japanese or Korean or anything like that. No, they're a certain subset of certain men. 96% Asian. This one at 68% unknown. But the most part, again, you're looking probably at an average here of about 80%, but a minimum 85%, you know, Asian, in terms of the ethnic religious background of the rape gang offenders. Obviously, you have other here at 17%. And then, for example, ethnic religious background of rape gang victims, predominantly white girls. You have 79% white, almost all young white girls, 97%, 79%, 61%, 78%. Obviously, some of these young girls have also attacked in the grooming gangs cases, for example, where like other religious backgrounds like Sikhs and Hindus and stuff like that. Okay, so it's always important to remember that it's not just white British girls, for example, but due to them being, you know, daughters of the infidels, they're seen as fair game. They're seen as fair game. So as you can see now, this video, which they're using as propaganda to target you and your children, is a complete inversion of reality. You have the victims here, and obviously they represented the victim as a young black girl. Obviously, you know, I'm not saying that young black girls don't experience sexual harassment. Of course not. Would never ever dream of saying that, because they do. Absolutely. You know, girls of every persuasion, whether it's religious persuasion or even ethnicity, will experience sexual harassment. It's disgusting wherever it happens. It is absolutely disgusting wherever it happens. That goes without saying. But saying that there's no commonalities between it, saying that there's no trends that can be observed. When you look at the Middle East, when you see the depraved, disgusting things that happen out there, just remember this, ladies and gentlemen. Next time you see a complete inversion of reality like adolescence, or a complete inversion of reality like the video that we just watched, just remember that. Just remember it is a complete inversion of the current state of affairs, and that the crimes against young white girls were deliberately covered up and obfuscated, along with all of the other grooming gang victims as well. Deliberately. By an evil state. By successive evil states. Successive evil states that want to do nothing more than expand their own power. So, for example, here we have a Senedd member. So this is where now we're getting into the last parts of today. We have Senedd members saying that the new Senedd members that we haven't even had yet, the 36 new Senedd members that we're supposed to be having in Wales, have already cost us millions, despite them not existing yet. And they're going to cost us nearly 10 million in the future by the end of next year. So this is a Senedd member of Caerphilly who supports plans for 36 more politicians, admits they've already cost taxpayers millions. The new MSs don't actually exist yet. That number will go up and up and up. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the encapsulation of the state of Welsh politics right now.
The Commission's budget provision for Senedd reform costs for 2023-24 were 571,000. In the current year, 24-25, the budget is 2.1 million. And the Commission's draft budget for the next financial year, 25-26, includes a 6.5 million provision for Senedd reform, but that is, of course, subject to a vote of this chamber later this afternoon. These Senedd reform costs include provision for new staff to prepare for the 7th Senedd, increases to non-staff budgets and funding for reconfiguring the chamber and additional members' offices in T. Howell. There will, of course, be further cost pressures for future years, but these remain estimates and projections that are yet to be refined in detail and incorporated into an annual budget, which again will be subject to the scrutiny of the Finance Committee and to be decided by this Senedd as a whole. The Commission.
Everything, of course, at taxpayer expense. Nothing of this coming out of their very, very deep, enriched socialist pockets. Nothing coming out of this. No, of course not. But 571,000 for the year 23 to 24, ladies and gentlemen. 500, was it 22 to 23? 23 to 24, £571,000 taxpayer money. Current year, 2.1 million. So already, by the end of this year, we're looking about 3 million we've spent just on the Senedd reforms. The 36 new MSs, obviously, they need their fat stacks and salaries for the 2 days a week that they work, and the creche that apparently they need building. And oh yeah, that's all things going on at the moment. But for and we need the £55 million Nation of Sanctuary plan so that more of the third worlders can come along and slash up our kids and groom and rape women. And great, good stuff. But already they don't even exist yet, and they've already cost nearly 3 million of the taxpayer from the Welsh taxpayer. And now, as he said, 6.1 million going forward, or 6.5 million provision going into the next year. So then we're looking at just over 9 million just on these Senedd reforms, just on 36, the cumulative costs of what it will take to accommodate 36 new MSs. Because of course, what we need when we have a bloated bureaucracy is more bureaucracy. What you need when you have a stupidly fat friend that won't get himself into shape and stuff like that is to feed him more food and make him do less activity. Of course. They need more accommodating work hours and the hybrid working and stuff like that for the 2 regular days a week that they work in the afternoon and a couple of extra committee meetings throughout the week. Whereas you bust your ass 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Do you get a crash in work? You need to be accommodated with hybrid working and all stuff like that. Things need to be made more workable for you. No, you're told to shut the fuck up and get on with it. Not these guys, of course. Always rules for thee, but not for me. But oh boy, you and me will be funding it. And again, Ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, are the Welsh government working on behalf of the Welsh people? And the answer is no. So you have Senedd member Rebecca Evans, MS, who should not surprise you, has a Blue Sky link in her bio. Surprised not to find pronouns, mind you. This is where liberal women will be the death of this country. Make no mistake about it. And weak men will also be the death of this country. She's been slammed by the housing standards. She slammed the housing standards for asylum seekers set by the UK government, saying they're much lower than what she likes to see. Obviously, it will be the Welsh taxpayer footing the bill for these asylum seekers to come over and have the lovely 4-star hotels and the 3 meals whilst your grandparents freeze to death because their winter fuel allowance was taken away. And they got to pay for everything. They got to pay for not only their own bills, which are going higher and higher and higher and higher every single time with the net zero zealotry and all things like that. But not only that, they have to pay to accommodate these foreigners that are coming over and stabbing and raping kids a lot of the time. So yeah, fantastic. But of course, the main issue of the day is making sure that these people are catered to. Because again, these are the future votes that these politicians are hoping to cash. They're hoping to eradicate. They don't care about you. I told you this, ladies and gentlemen. They don't care about you. Soon, they are planning for your vote to mean nothing. Your vote will mean nothing if they get their way. So we got to make sure next year that we act very wisely.
And we share completely your concerns about the way in which asylum seekers and refugees are treated when they do come to the UK seeking asylum. For our part, we've tried to open up the Discretionary Assistance Fund, for example, to ensure that asylum seekers and refugees who are facing real destitution are able to access support through that. However,
just remember, when the government says they've opened up a fund, it means that they've allocated either funds that they've gone from some, globalist NGO or something like that, how they're being funded by Soros-backed organizations and stuff like that. Or they're doing it with the money of the taxpayer, because they'll never do it with money for their own pocket. That's not what they're there for. They're allocating taxpayer money for this so that you're funding your own destruction. How's that? How those lemons? How those apples?
we have deep concerns, as I know you do, about the UK government's approach to the provision of housing, for example. The standards which the UK government requires for housing are much, much lower than those which we would like to see, and those which we would be satisfied for providing people who live in Wales. So we would expect no worse standards for people who are asylum seekers and refugees. So it's a huge.
But again, if anything goes wrong with your house, obviously you got to pay for it. And half the time the insurance which you're forced to pay for doesn't cover it anyway. We've had that personally. So if there's anything with your Welshman who struggled to get on the housing ladder, has managed to get on the housing ladder, Welshman or woman, I'll say Welshman or woman. If anything happens with that house, then no, you've got to pay for all of it. You're not getting any help whatsoever. But these random third worlders that are coming across the border, these economic chances coming across the border, they get everything out of the taxes that you pay paid for them. Make it make sense. You wonder why so many people are getting depressed and feeling like there's no hope anymore in what's going on? It's because of politicians like Rebecca here. It's because of governments that we've had the last 25 or more years that have been not working in the interest of the people that they're supposed to represent, that they've been elected to represent. They're working on behalf of foreign interest. They're a foreign government. We're an occupied country. And that goes for all of the UK. And people are seeing it. People are seeing it. Take, for example, the Americans. It leads us into our next story now. So, British officials face US travel ban over social media censorship. So, Marco Rubio not pulling any punches. Visa block could apply for individuals working for Ofcom, the regulator for policing online safety laws. So it says here, British officials face being banned from the United States if they are found to have breached the free speech rights of American citizens. Americans don't mess about with this stuff. They take it very, very seriously. And it's them taking it very, very seriously that is going to result in us getting our free speech laws back one day. It's going to result now we're getting free speech back because people understand now how much they've lost. People understand exactly how much they've lost. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, said, quote, said foreign officials, quote, complicit in censoring, unquote, American citizens and media companies will be denied entry into the US. The visa ban could apply to individuals working for Ofcom, which is the regulator responsible for policing Britain's online safety laws. The US State Department has repeatedly raised concerns over the law's capacity to curtail freedom of expression. The announcement is said to have taken taken British officials by surprise, and diplomats were seeking clarity. So, Rubio clarified, said for too long, Americans have been fined, harassed, and even charged by foreign authorities for exercising their free speech rights. They've even been threatened with extradition, which I'll show you now, ladies and gentlemen, as if we have any jurisdiction. We complain about foreign interference in our elections when Trump and Musk were exposing the rape genocide that people were trying to cover up, the rape jihad genocide that people were trying to cover up, like Jess Phillips. Elon Musk infamously called her a rape genocide apologist, and correctly so. Mark Rowley came out on Sky News and all but basically said that he hadn't ruled out extradition, and that even Americans across the channel in their own country, Americans across the pond in their own country, would be arrested for mean posts, inferring to Elon Musk and others. So others, when this broke around August last year, so Benny Johnson commented on it. Who else did we have? The big account End Wokeness highlighted it. Jim Ferguson, I think, commented on it as well, although he commented on it a little bit later. So, for example, here is Mark Rowley all but saying he's going to extradite Americans to the UK to face trial for mean social media posts.
So we'll throw the full force of the law at offenders, whether that's charging people with assaults, violent disorder, riot, and if terrorism offences are appropriate, I know the Director of Public Prosecutions has said he's prepared to consider that. We will throw the full force of the law at people. And whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by...
Exactly what Lucy Connolly was in prison for, that the reporter said there, by the way. That's what she's in prison for. Incitement to hatred. Incitement to hatred that a disgusting Islamic terrorist Rwandan migrant went and stabbed up 3 young girls, killed them in one of the most brutal fashions we've ever seen, and then injured several others. Yeah, don't hate that, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you don't hate that.
By online commentary, I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard, maybe in a different country?
Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we'll come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the obs who are causing the problems for communities.
Yeah, of course, Mark, of course, fucking clown. But yeah, when they are doing what they should be doing, the Americans, they're taking us at our word. Because make no mistake, do you think that if Mark Rowley could, he would extradite Elon Musk and put him in a British prison so that he couldn't contribute to X and highlight these things that the British state doesn't want highlighted? Of course he would. Of course they would. Do you think, as I said, you saw this in America with the Democrats. You think if they were trying to put Trump in prison for the rest of his life, right? You think they wouldn't have done it if they could have? Of course they would have. Of course they would. They don't care. They don't care about anything. They don't care about, due process. They don't care about any of these things as much as they claim to. And they're noticing that this is happening in one of their supposed allies, i.e. us, as much as the people are often on the side of Donald Trump and the current administration, because they want free speech. They want, oftentimes like myself, the right to bear arms. We could do with the First and Second Amendment if we outright need it at this point, basically to avoid becoming an Islamic country, in my opinion. It is a matter of do or die now. It is a matter of do or die. But this is where he goes on to highlight, it is unacceptable for foreign officials to issue or threaten arrest warrants on US citizens or US residents for social media posts on American platforms while physically present on US soil. Deliberately taking an aim at Mark Rowley there. Absolutely. Obviously, Mr. Rubio does not forget. This was very, very recent. This article was published 3 days ago in The Telegraph. And obviously, Mark Rowley said those remarks in August last year. Evidently, Rubio does not forget. It is, he went on to highlight, saying, it is similarly unacceptable for foreign officials to demand that American tech platforms adopt global content moderation policies or engage in censorship activity that reaches beyond their authority and into the United States. So a little bit of context for you, ladies and gentlemen. The Online Safety Act, which is apparently, according to the Telegraph, despised by Trump's administration because of the massive fines it can levy on US tech companies, is an act that social media giants can face under the law fines of up to £18 million or 10% of their annual revenue if they fail to remove harmful content from their platforms. Now, if harmful content, for example, was the Silenced documentary, if harmful content was the social media post that Elon Musk made, which reached out to potentially hundreds of millions of people, highlighting the rape genocide cover-up that the UK government were engaging in. And then obviously you had Tim Pool talking about it on his platform. You had all of these big people out there in America drawing attention to what's going on here that we would have had no chance of getting out there with that reach otherwise if it had not been for free speech and going in direct defiance of outright totalitarian, disgusting, weak invertebrates like Mark Rowley here. So yeah, Americans not playing around. Be interesting to see how we respond. I see we, the British government, responds to this. I class the British government as a separate entity. It doesn't represent the people whatsoever. The Chargosians are feeling the pinch of that right now. There's some last bits now, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to hammer home how we've got a large part about how we've got into this problem that we're in, and then a nice little bit about the supposed rent boys that Keir Starmer has seemed to have the pleasure of engaging in, to his likely now regret, with his residence being firebombed and stuff. So now we have, for example, Anas Sawa is asked by a journalist here about fake asylum seekers in Glasgow who are raping women, in which the Blob attempts to cover up. And this highlights a problem that nobody wants to admit, and that we should not have any foreigner as a member of parliament or in any kind of political power. That is not a controversial statement. Should not be a controversial statement. Should have no foreigners as MPs or MSs. Is that simple? Because they will obfuscate, cover up, and act in their own sectarian interests on behalf of their own community. So the rape gangs in Glasgow have been well documented. Rape gangs in all the cities up and down the country, in Scotland, in England, and Wales, been relatively well documented. In Wales, much less so. Obviously, much more in areas in England, like Luton, Telford, obviously Oldham, Rochdale, Rotherham, all of these places. And Glasgow's been one of them. Manu calls a journalist a racist. Apparently that is Peter Adam Smith, who should not surprise you, of ITV News. And yeah, this is why... Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I was looking at my phone. This is why the shit that we're in is in large part because we have foreign MPs, no surprise, acting on foreign interests.
So, Mr Saga, can you tell us the names of the three people in Glasgow who were murdered by the Muslim asylum seeker? Can you tell us what happened with the rapes of children in Glasgow from fake asylum seekers who were raping kids, and then it was covered up by the actual...
I think you should take your far-right nonsense somewhere else.
Well, I would think that somebody that supports a Muslim who supports a prophet who had...
And that is not just, by the way, a foreigner's MP problem. The indoctrination that's occurred on many of the parts of our own MPs that are native to this country has to be dealt with as well. And those people need to be dealt with as well. It's just it's less surprising coming from a foreign MP. So he says, yeah, you should take your far-right nonsense somewhere else, because of course that's all it is. The systematic rape, torture, trafficking, drugging, and cover-up of what happened with these children is always far-right nonsense.
Covered up by the actual...
I think you should take your far-right nonsense somewhere else.
I think
he should take himself somewhere else.
As a Muslim who supports a prophet who had sex with a 9-year-old girl and had sex slaves, I think that...
If you didn't know that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the linchpin, basically, of Islam, is that they follow the example of the Prophet Muhammad, who married Aisha at 6, consummated the marriage at 9, and they believe that he is exemplary conduct to follow. And instantly then you see why there's a commonality between all of the perpetrators of the grooming gangs and a lot of times all of the victims. Because again, daughters of the infidels, you do whatever the hell you want. You keep them as sex slaves, you can do whatever the hell you want. But again, don't say anything, guys, because multiculturalism is the religion of the day. And you might be racist if you say anything about that. But again, should not surprise you that this is the tact he's chosen to take. So again, it should not be controversial to say that we should not have foreigners as MPs, because then you end up people like Anas Sawa saying that, you know, the systematic rape and grooming and trafficking and torture of young girls is just, you know, far-right conspiracy nonsense. And he should be sent back to wherever he is from, and it is simple as that. He has no business being in Scotland or in any country on these isles. Same goes for Hamza Yousaf, same goes for a lot of people. Now finally, we're going to look at this funny little incident now. I haven't seen this video yet, but this is Andrew Bridgen dropping a bombshell about the 3 rent boys connected to Starmer. A former Ukrainian Secret Service agent says the boys were gathering information from UK politicians and passing it on to Ukrainian dissident Portnov. Portnov is a challenger to Zelensky, who was assassinated in Madrid 4 days after their arrest, I believe, if that is Portnov, because the person who wrote this didn't make the distinction as to who the challenger in question is. I believe they're referring to Portnov. And apparently the plan is to replace Zelensky and continue the war, because as Julian Assange pointed out before, the goal is not to have a successful war. The goal is to have an endless war. The goal is to have an endless war in this instance so that they can flood Ukraine with a bunch of third world migrants again and continue their hostile takeover and turn us into a one world multicultural hellscape government system. So anyway, I'll throw it over to Andrew Bridgen now. That's going to be the last thing for today, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what he has to say about Keir Starmer's guilty pleasures over here.
You know, about, well, there's also the situation with Starmer has been very interesting, and it's not just what the media are saying, but what they're not saying. So three Ukrainian male models have been arrested for arson attacks on Keir Starmer's property. And they all had accounts on Grindr, interestingly enough, apparently, which have all been deleted. And there are obviously some questions about Keir Starmer's private life and his relationship with Lord Ali, who's openly homosexual. But what the media aren't hearing, and I saw a report on this, it was actually from Vasily Poroshkov, the whistleblower to me about the child trafficking from Ukraine, the former Ukrainian Secret Service agent. Yes. And he claims that that the 3 Ukrainian rent boys were gathering information from senior politicians in the UK, and they were passing them to the Ukrainian dissident in Madrid, who was mysteriously assassinated 4 days after their arrest.
Oh, this is
and he would have seen himself as a potential challenger at the next presidential elections in Ukraine. And what I'm hearing is that they're clearing the decks, and that the preferred candidate, when Zelensky has, I think, shot his bolt, but the preferred candidate for the globalists is the gentleman who's now serving, he's former head of the Ukrainian armed forces, and he's now serving as the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, and that he'll be the next president. And the war will continue.
It is just a sea of sordid human behaviour. It is
very interesting indeed. Very scary stuff. Obviously, a lot of us just want this war to be over and done with. Now that Trump's in office, I don't think there's going to be much that is going to come of this now, only because I can't see Trump allowing this to go on. I can't see Trump allowing this to go on. I think it's going to be a make or break issue. At least for the Americans, at least they'll pull out and do whatever they're going to do in their own best interest, as they should do. But it tells you a lot now about why we've recently signed on to another however many £billion for however many years deal with Ukraine, because obviously they don't want this war. They don't want the war to end. They're perfectly happy with entire generations of young Ukrainian men going and dying on the front line, because they know they'll replace them with their own preferred candidates for subsequent elections anyway, which would be the third world as they're trying to occupy every Western country with at the moment. You know, we are supposedly like the enlightened liberal democracies of the world and stuff like that. And Russia, I'm not a Russia fan by any means. You know, I don't like Putin. You know, I got no reason to like him or anything like that. But you look at the streets of Moscow versus the streets of Berlin versus the streets of Paris versus the streets of London versus the streets of Luton versus the streets of Cardiff versus the streets of Swansea versus the streets of Glasgow versus the streets of Vienna. Vienna, the last stand about 150 years ago, or 200 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. The last stand basically against the Muslim invaders, where they were repelled from Vienna, and now they were conquered by our own ideological indoctrination and our own empathy. They say that we're evil. They say that we're an evil people, right? These anti-racists, these, gender Marxists, all of these people, right? The politicians claim the white man is evil, white supremacy, all this and that. Tells you a lot. They don't want to get as far as they have. They had to exploit our kindness and our empathy for not liking seeing people across the other side of the world be the victim of their own authoritarian governments, children starving, all of this stuff, wars going on. And they had to use that. They had to use people's empathy, care, in order to facilitate the invasion of their countries. Makes you wonder, maybe if Nazi Germany, instead of flying the Luftwaffe over and bombing London, bombing our cities, all of this stuff, they, dressed up in rags and dropped their documentation in the channel and came across on small boats. Maybe they would have had a lot more success. Maybe they would have had a lot more success. So that's certainly the way that we have been colonized and conquered in the modern day. Certainly the way we've been colonized and conquered in the modern day. But obviously they want this war to continue, because obviously they can fleece the taxpayers for it. The already millionaires and billionaires at the top of the chain, your Bernie Sanderses, your Keir Starmers, your Emmanuel Macrons, who's sadly the victim of domestic abuse recently. If you saw the video from him coming off the plane. They can fleece the taxpayer for it, obviously. They can impoverish us more because of it. And they can make Ukrainians even less able to take care of their national security with the entire generation of young men that they would have wiped out. Obviously, then they need a new generation of young men to come in and do the heavy lifting. Sooner or later, you might not even have Ukrainians anymore. I suppose we'll see. Anyway, thank you very much for watching that episode, guys. Hope you found it useful. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr for watching. Hwyl fawr. See you next time. Godspeed.